And let's get started. Welcome to today's class, all about a multitude of things, to be honest with you. I'm going to call it a life by design, but this is not your mindset life by design class that I think a lot of people will hear from the subject. So I'm going to figure out the description and what we're going to call it. But for today, we're going to call it life by design. But we're going to go into the meat of it, right? A lot of times we talk about life by design and we talk about finding our why and, just getting a hold of that. I want to go into some more tangibles. I used to struggle with my why or my desires. And one of the things that I realized quickly was the basis of why I struggled was because I didn't know where to find clarity on what was zooming around in my head, right? The other thing is we hear other people's whys, and we start to, when you hear a suggestion from somebody, your brain instantaneously will start to gravitate and try and justify or deny that person's thought. So there's a big reason why when you guys are doing CMAs or you guys want me to look over a CMA, you guys, I don't want your CMA. I want the address so I'm not tainted by the numbers that you've came up with. So any of you guys that have had me run your CMAs for you on any of your listings, all I want is your address. And it's because psychologically speaking, our minds are so powerful, we can't do that. So step one to think about our future, to quantify and to create clarity is to not base what we're thinking about off of what somebody else has said. So I'm going to be very careful today to kind of share with you guys some of the things that I went through. I'm going to share with you another a friend of mine that's near and dear to my heart that went through some different things to find, and she doesn't even call it her why. What she needed to do was she needed to find motivation to get herself back in order is what it really came down to. So when we talk about a life by design, we need clarity. We need some tangibles. So let's go through and define a few things. And I've done this with a couple of you on some calls, but a life by design, the next thing that we typically hear is a work-life balance, okay? And a work-life balance, I think when we, in our heads, when we hear that, you tell me if you guys feel like this, but when I think of work-life balance, I think of juggling my time accordingly. I think of understanding that I do need some time for R&R, I do need some time for my family, and I do need some time for work. And one of the things that I realized over the years is your work-life balance, it will never actually truly be at a homeostatic point. It will never actually truly be at a perfect balance. What it is you can try and balance day to day or year to year, month to month. But the cool part about it is when you think of balance, and if this is the balance, okay, I got work over here and I got life over here. Here's what my mind thought that meant. When workload goes up, life is still here, right? Is that the way you guys kind of have looked at it? Well, here's the reality, and here's what I've felt. Here's what I see on a day-to-day basis. Here's what a reality. When when work goes up, the equal and opposite happens to your life. See, a lot of times when we are starting to work on our life, we want our business to stay where it's at. But if we go on vacation, the business does not stay here because you're not making your calls. So it equally has to drop. That's really what the work-life balance is. It's understanding that with equal effort comes the equal and opposite reaction from the opposite thing. And that was an anomaly for my brain to understand. And so just basically what I'm getting at is when you guys are getting started into your real estate careers, your focus in whether or not you try, like you've been at birthday parties, you've been talking with your family, and because real estate's new and you're getting off the ground and you're in a commission-based world, trust me when I say you think about work more often than you want to at this point. And what I really want to start you guys off with is give yourself some grace around that. There's a reason why you're at your in-laws house or at your Christmas party or doing some things and work comes up. It's because you're working on creating a new career and a new life for yourself. And that means you may or may not be as present as you typically are used to being at your personal functions. And so give yourself that grace, because you're masterminding, you're thinking, you're planning, you're discovering. And as soon as you give yourself the grace to have that mental space to do so, I'm not saying the frustration doesn't still come. Like, you want to be present with your family, you want to be present with your friends and at work and life. What I encourage you to do is know that that's going to happen. So create habits around ways that you can help that from happening. And so here's what I do. So you guys, I run high, I run hot, I run fast. When I get home from work, I have a very established routine at my house. Good, bad, or indifferent, I have no idea what it's doing to my daughter psychologically. I don't really know, but I had to create a boundary and a habit. See, I started coming home from work, and the first thing I would do is I would, greet my daughter, greet my wife, and I would just all of a sudden be with them. And I basically had to learn, I was trying to switch work off in an instant, and that doesn't work for me. And so I have to create a habit. So I tried to drive around for a little bit. I used to live 5 minutes from the office. It wasn't enough time to decompress. So I would drive around for a little bit, but then I caught myself looking at empty properties or empty lots or boarded up homes. And I started masterminding around how I can buy them and invest with them. And that wasn't working. So then I would listen to some audiobooks and I'd drive around for a little bit, and that wasn't working. And so when I get home from work, what it's come down to is I get home and my wife, my family, my dog, they know that I don't really even engage with them right off the rip. I get home, I walk in the door. If they're there, I say hello, and they automatically know my habit is I go straight to my room, I shut the door, I empty my pockets, and I change my clothes. I don't know what in the world this does for me, but by changing my clothes, it's the switch I was looking for. By emptying my pockets from everything that's in my pockets all day long, it was the switch that I was looking for. If I need a couple of moments, the door's shut, the room's empty, I'll just lay down for a second and try not to get on my phone, emails, Facebook, and just be for a second. So that way, everything that I know is going to flood my mind when I go talk to my wife and when I go talk to my daughter, it can flee then and not in front of them. I check my phone one last time to make sure I finalize the day. Sometimes I leave the office thinking all text messages, all emails, all voicemails are all sent out. Sometimes I need to just check it one more time for my sanity, and then when I go downstairs, it's beautiful. I can disconnect with the best of them now. And it took me, you guys, it took me so many things to trial and error. And the other thing is to create a habit, you have to stick with something for a period of time. I mean, I used to drive around telling myself, don't look at real estate, don't look at real estate, don't look at real estate. I had to work on that for 30 days, 60 days, and that wasn't working. Then it was audiobooks. Don't drive in town, go out of town, so that way you can't see that stuff. I realized the drive just wasn't helping. It wasn't the time away from my computer to my house. It was I needed to find another switch. I know some real estate agents that never work out in the mornings. They only leave the office, go to the gym, and their family pretty much knows that that's part of their work day because it's the only time it's the only way they can get out of their head. So I'm not going to beat this like a dead horse, but I really want you guys to understand that what you need to get out of this class today, the only way to create a life by design is to stop what you're doing today. If you are not where your business wants to be, if you are not in alignment with your daily activities, if you have to almost completely change up some things in your life and keep trying and over and over again, it boils, that's just one habit I had to change, guys. There's other things that I've went through that we won't tag off of all the time, but you're going to need to create different habits. You're in a different profession, a different realm, and you got to create those different habits. And here's the cool part about creating those different habits. It not only helps with this so-called work-life balance, it actually will cause you to find time in your day that you never found possible before. I never was really an afternoon or evening type of person. I run on all cylinders basically up until about 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's why you guys don't see me do a lot of trainings after that. I do a lot of one-on-ones, and I do a lot of just my own stuff, but I'm not firing all cylinders at that time. I've had to create different habits throughout my day to be able to have that time. And so for me, I stopped drinking a lot of coffee in the morning. I limit myself now to 1 coffee in the morning, and then I drink another cup of coffee usually after lunch or something like that, and that kind of propels me. And because I'm drinking 2 cups of coffee a day, I actually reduced my coffee consumption in half. I used to drink 4 cups in the morning. It was pretty much habitual for me. And that caffeine was causing me to drain myself in the end of the day. So a work-life balance is really starts with the idea that you have to be hyper aware of your surroundings and you as a person and an individual. That's where it starts. But now, how do you do that? Like, let's talk about that, right? How do you do that, right? How do we go through this and understand that? And the other thing that we're going to really dive into today is once you understand the work-life balance and the concept of you're going to be working a lot right now, your foundational building blocks take time. Melissa can attest. I've heard her huff over the phone and on video, I don't know how many times. And I always smile. And what do I say, Melissa?
I don't know, breathe. I don't know.
Well, yes, I say that. But I always tell Melissa, I always say, give yourself some grace. Because the reality of things is 1 year from now, you are not going to be working on your foundational pieces. And you're going to wish that you had some more stuff to work on, because once you get everything built up, this job becomes kind of mundane. This job kind of becomes very repetitious daily, every day. It's very similar day, even though you're working on different things every day.
What?
What was that, Melissa?
Oh, I was just looking at Zach Bert's thing. I thought that was a live video. I was like, what is going on there?
Oh,
sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But that's what I tell Melissa is give yourself some grace. Understand that there is no end game to this, right? I still don't have my website where I want it to be 6 years later. And I stopped caring about it because I realized it doesn't matter. The way I run my business, my website doesn't matter. The way some of you guys run your business, that website will matter, right? And so that's what I can kind of help you guys out with the work-life balance, is understanding it's a balance and there's an equal opposite pole, and that when you're frustrated with this balancing act, there's 100% of the time, the only way to get out of the frustrated piece of that balancing act is to start to change some habits around what you want to accomplish. So every single time, here's an action item for you. Every single time you feel frustrated in this industry or with your life or anything that there is, recognize the constant frustrations. And here's where, kind of going back to my habit. I get home from work, I tell myself my brain was turned off, I hug my daughter, hug my wife, give them kisses, and then start dinner or bath time, wherever they'd be at. And then guess what I'd find? I'd find myself on my phone. I'd find myself, hearing my phone vibrate from across the room, like, ooh, I got to go answer that. Because I was in that habit all day long, right? I was in the habit of answering my phone. I'm in the habit of making those calls or responding back to people. And so I needed to try and find a trigger that would just help, where now, I have to say this, but I apologize. Nights are hard to get a hold of me now. Not necessarily hard, but you know what I do if you guys call? I probably don't answer right away unless I'm in a separate room from my wife and daughter. My frustration was I'm not going to be the dad always on the phone when I'm present with my family. They understand my job, and they understand that when I leave the room, I'm probably making a business call. But remember, everything's psychological. Psychologically speaking, dad's just not in the house. Dad's not in the room. Who cares what dad's doing? But if I'm sitting there in front of them, I don't want that preconceived thing. Do you guys know where that came from? A lot of our frustrations come from prior experiences in our life. And this one, do you know what this one comes from? The movie Hook. Has anybody seen the movie Hook? Okay, so you're gonna know when they're at that baseball game and Dad's always on his phone. That just resonates with me, and I don't know why. I haven't seen that movie for 12 plus years, probably probably more than that. But that movie, I said I never want to be that dad. I never want to be that person. And so that's why it started frustrating me when I was that person, and I didn't even realize who I became that. I became the very thing I didn't want to become from a movie I watched umpteen years ago. And so half of our frustrations typically come from our pre-programming. My mom and dad were very, very, very much the, I don't know what you want to call it. We had dinner every single night together as a family, home cooked. The times changed. My parents were both postal carriers. They worked 12 plus hours a day. They were always on the overtime list to make ends meet. And, you never know when they were going to come home. My sister and I were both in sports. You never knew when our games were going to end. But it didn't matter the time. The routine was the exact same, no matter what, every single night, 7 days a week, unless there was some one-off type of thing. We lived in a town where there was, I was talking with Caleb, I graduated with 56 people. There was no such thing as fast food. There was no such thing as restaurants, and there was no such thing as pizza delivery, unless you wanted to drive 35 minutes away. And so for me, I have to come home and do that. Now, do I have to? I don't think so. I don't know what's right and what's wrong, but that's where I was programmed, so that's what I want to do. And so that's why it frustrated me that I started that habit, okay? So when you guys get into habits or things that are frustrating you, typically you're going to look at them in your own personal perceived world as a bad habit. And the only way to change that bad habit is to start with the habit before. Okay, here's the key. Write down all of your frustrations and then look at how you got there. And it's the habit before. And mine was something I couldn't control. And that's why I thought by working on the length of the drive time home to decompress was going to be the actual thing that helped me. Because I felt like I was in that frustration because I didn't have enough drive time from work. So when you find a frustration, that's usually a bad habit that you're trying to work on. But the key is a lot of people dive right into that habit. So a lot of people would be like, well, I get home from work. I don't like to be on my phone. My wife doesn't like it. And I don't know how to stop. I just need to stop. And so I'm going to try and put my phone over in my bedroom. I'm going to try and be here and there. That's actually, you're only attacking that bad habit, but that bad habit was actually created usually upon an action before that happened. And so if you can attack that, you can start to work on your bad habits. Have any of you guys in here had trouble basically kicking a bad habit? And after I said that, have any of you had trouble kicking a bad habit? And when you look back, were you just focused on that habit and ways to change just that habit? And sometimes, honestly, sometimes that works, but did that help? And that's where people, they give up. They can't find the motivation. They can't figure out why their mind can't change that one thing. And I found, and through a lot of trainings, you guys, NLP. You can write that down, watch videos on it. Dalton's shaking his head, my friend. There you go. Or I'm sorry, not Dalton, Colton. Sorry. Colton's shaking his head. NLP, Neuro Linguistics Programming. Now, that's more about what we say and how we say it and things of that nature, but neurolinguistics, neural programming is huge. And that's kind of through some of those classes, through some leadership classes, through some things around just depression, anxiety, alcoholism. I have a lot of things that go on in my family's life, my direct family, as well as my indirect, as well as my extended family. And so I try so hard to focus on helping others in not only in your guys' life, but my family life. And through lots of seminars and trainings, I found out that It's actually usually the habit before the frustration that causes the frustration. You attack that. Since that's not the habit that you're frustrated about, it's easier to change. It's easier to work on because you don't have an emotion around trying to change it. Is that ringing clear? I don't want to beat that like a dead horse. I mean, I will, but cool. So as you're working on your work-life balance, recognize those frustration parts, recognize those different things, and understand that it's usually the habit before that you need to change the habit that you want to change. That's key. All right. Now, we're also talking about that work-life balance, and work-life balance also has motivation, right? Motivation, desire, your big why. You know, a lot of people will tell you if you do X, Y, and Z, and you can just find your big why, and you can find your motivation, you're going to just go out there and kill it, right? All right. So let me give you a reason why I'm on board with finding your big why. I'm on board with understanding that a desire helps and that creates motivation, right? But I also know that emotion makes people act, okay? And so you guys have heard my analogy before, right? If I'm back in high school and my parents say, hey, Bruce, we're going to send you to ballet school. Doesn't matter what they try and do. They're not going to motivate me to go be a ballet dancer. I'm just not that guy. But if my parents say, hey, Bruce, you do X, Y, and Z for this next year, we'll pay for your entire soccer club, the one that you want to be in that we can't afford. You do X, Y, and Z for the entire rest of this year, and we'll get you into there in this next spring. I will do whatever it takes. But my parents didn't have to create the motivation. My parents didn't have to create the desire. That's something that I had already. It was already there. But you could tell me that they could pay thousands of dollars to be a ballet dancer and not have any strings attached, and I wouldn't have done it. So when we talk about desire, motivation, and your why, here's what you guys have to take away from this. Nobody will be able to find it with you or for you. The only thing that somebody is going to be able to help you do is ask enough questions to create enough power or clarity around it to find it. You all have it. You all have something inside of you that I still don't know what it is yet. I won't know. I might not know. Who cares if I know? Do you guys know my why? Does it matter? Melissa's shaking her head. I did share with you, didn't I? It doesn't matter, right? What matters is how I coach you, how I educate you, how I train you. It doesn't matter why I do it to you, which is exactly why none of you would ever be able to help me with it, which is why my coaches could never help me with it, which is why the only time I actually found my true desire and motivation is when I quit looking to others to help me find it. That was when I really was able to get deep with myself. You guys have heard Staples' easy button, right? And this is going to go on an extreme, but I talk to a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people who are frustrated. I talk to a lot of people who want to give it their all and can't figure out why they struggle with giving it their all. And I'm not saying, and like I said, that's an extreme, but a lot of people that reach out to others to help find their personal motivation or why, you're kind of actually hitting the easy button. You're really trying to skip the most important step. And the most important step is that you have to know that yours will come from you and it will come from within. So today's class and today's video is all about how do we work on our work-life balance, and how do we continually focus on our motivations, our dreams and desires? But more than anything, what are some steps and some things that you guys can do to start to discover your motivation, to start to discover why it is we help people buy and sell homes, to help us figure out, like, okay, let me ask you this. I'm just gonna call on people on video. Melissa, when did you wake up this morning, and what time was your intention going to bed last night to wake up?
I woke up at 6 and that was my intention.
Why?
Because I found that I do better when I have like a set bedtime and a set wake up time. It gives me time to read in the morning and kind of get ready for the day.
So you found that with a morning routine, it helps you focus and do better things throughout the day. Where did you discover that, and what part of your life did you discover that through?
Um, well, like just a few weeks ago, or maybe a few months ago now, I was having a hard time getting out of bed, and I realized I need to be on more of a schedule because this job doesn't require, like, there isn't a 9 to 5. So I needed to put myself on that. So it was just recently, but it's helped.
It's helped. And so you decided that you needed to make a change because you were frustrated by the way your days were going?
Yeah, I just felt like I was so tired, and it wasn't justified because I was getting so much sleep. So I thought, getting up earlier and really kickstarting my day would help me have more energy. And I don't work out, which I know a lot of people do in the morning, but yeah, just reading and like having a set bedtime and set wake up time has given me that energy and like purpose in the day.
Colton, thank you.
Did you call me?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I barely heard that. So
Okay, sorry. Yeah,
let's
same
see.
question.
Yeah. Today I woke up at 7 a.m. My intention was to wake up at 5 a.m., considering I went to bed at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. last night. Yeah.
And what do you think caused that?
For the past week, I've been in bed by about 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and up at 4 a.m. So that's in part by my 9 to 5 gig. I got to be in at 4:30 in the morning. I haven't had to do that for a while though. So with that happening, I've noticed my energy levels a lot higher, being up that early, surprisingly. So I'm trying to keep that going, even when I don't have to be in, at 4:30 in the morning.
Nice. I'm not going to ask too many clarifying questions because yours is kind of, I guess, the motivation behind it is yeah, you got to get to those other things. But no, I'm going to tag off of a couple of things that you said here in a moment. That was actually perfect. Zach.
I woke up at 8 this morning. Reason for that is Wednesday mornings I have my own personal therapy session, so I definitely needed to be up in time for that. Additionally, I typically wake up around 8:30, and that's just because with my other job, I'm usually not home before 1 a.m., sometimes later, and getting less than 6.5 hours of sleep is usually just not a good way for me to operate personally.
Right on. But on Wednesdays, you chose to wake up earlier for your personal therapeutic time. When did that start and why?
It started a few months back, and it was without going too far into it, I found myself with a bunch of pretty undesirable situations, not being happy with where I was, and I decided that without doing some serious personal work, I was just going to be stuck in cycles, probably pretty similar to what we're discussing here.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. And just so you guys, just a precursor, I don't expect you guys to share too much personal stuff. So if I call on you, just pass, right? Erica.
I got up at 7:30. I went to bed around 11:30. That was about my plan. I maybe wanted to get up a little bit earlier, but I have plenty of time in the morning. I used to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So I was up at like 5:30 to be at school by 7 and still have a good morning routine. And I found it really hard while I was teaching to go to bed at a time that made it make sense to get up that early. And so I was constantly tired. And so once I stopped teaching and kind of had control over when I can go to bed, I found that it just works better for me if I go to bed a little later and still get up at like a reasonable time. So I'm still getting like a full 8 hours of sleep, which works perfectly, and I've never felt more well rested. So I don't know what that's about.
Okay. So you still woke up at 7:30, even though you have ample amount of time in the morning. What still caused you to wake up? Was it just because you woke up, or is it because you were? I'm not gonna make assumptions.
I mean, my husband gets up right around then, and so we kind of follow a similar morning routine. We both get ready about the same time now. And that's, I guess, like a valuable time for me, even though we're not directly interacting with each other. But he's busy during the day and I'm busy during the day, so we don't get that time just to be near each other. So I think just having like a similar morning routine as he has is good for me.
If you went a month without having that time with your husband in the morning, would that cause frustration in your life, or you know, some sort of heartache or some sort of anything?
It would and has. When I was, like I said, I was teaching, so I was up at 7:30 and he still didn't have to be up until, or I was up at 5:30. He didn't have to be up until 7:30 or 8, and I was already out the door. So I'd kiss him on the cheek and leave, and he's still asleep in bed, and that was as much interaction as we got. And I would come home every single day and just miss him, where now I don't so much anymore.
You what? Sorry.
I would come home each day after work and just feel like I was missing him more than I do now.
Perfect. Harry.
So I get up at, well, actually, I don't have an alarm clock. My life is 7 o'clock, and it's been that way for so long that I can't, for the last 4 years now. Prior to that, just so you know, I was up every morning at 6 o'clock. I was out on the trail by 6:30. I ran till 7:30, came back, did all my emails. So I had this routine, and I call it habits. If you get yourself into that habit every day, and I did it 6 days a week. I ran every day, 6 days a week. And then Sunday was my day not to do anything. But you do that for health, you do it for your mind. And don't laugh at this, but I always had a subject every morning on the way to work. I would think of something that I needed to get done at work or a memo I needed to write. So while I was running, I would write that memo in my brain when I was running. That's just how I did my morning. So I felt like I was always killing two birds with one stone, right? I'm thinking how I'm going to write this, whatever I'm going to do, and I'm running. And so that's what I did every morning. Now I get up about 7 o'clock and I get ready for our 8:30 call, and I sort of get my mind in that. I'm like you. I like to have a cup of coffee and think about the day. Mm-hmm. And what's the most important thing I want to do that day.
Perfect. Is there anybody else that wants to share? Because for the sake of time, I was going to go into some things. You guys all played into things very well. You didn't play into it. That's the reality of it. There was nothing to play into. What it is all of us have the same career, and all of us have something different. And it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like all of us have created our morning habits and routines, because without them, it sounds like we would have some frustrations in our lives, right? To Colton's point, you know, he said something that was pretty profound to me. This resonated well with me, because I was very similar. He said that surprisingly, by waking up consistently at 4 a.m., he had more energy than he had. Why do you think that is, Colton?
You know, just the consistency piece. I feel like my body gets thrown off if, you know, one day I'm up at 4, the next I'm up at 8, next day I'm up at 6 a.m. I feel like that's just a pretty typical human behavior to get thrown off by that. And for me, you know, something that similarly resonated is, you know, you said you're firing on all cylinders till about 2 or 3 p.m. It's pretty similar for me as well. And if I'm, you know, not up at 4 a.m., get up at 8 a.m., only get that like 6 hours of extremely productive time. I'm not feeling that productive, you know, past 3, 4 p.m. So it's so far it's helped me immensely, having that time in the morning to kind of reflect on my day. I don't know. It just feels good also being up that early, because you know you're that early bird getting the worm. So that's a confidence boost, I guess, on my end.
Cool. So I'm going to go back to Zach and Melissa. They had both mentioned the importance of the hours that they get to sleep and to have. You know, and you guys both mentioned, you know, similar, like, you know, 8 hours. And Erica, I think, said the same thing. So where did 8 hours come from? Where did the hours of sleep that you guys get come from?
I typically try and get a little bit closer to 6.5, but that's just kind of an arbitrary number that I'd experimented around with, and I eventually figured out, all right, I get at least 6.5, I can function throughout the day.
So through trial and error. Cool. Melissa?
Mine was probably just through like the recommendations and like, all right, sounds good and it's worked, but just what people say you should be getting. So yeah.
Erica's shaking her head too. Yeah, no, I always found that was quite the anomaly. Going through health class, going through some different things, and they say, you know, 6 to 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours. But on a scale, like, think about that. That's a 2-hour difference. That's a 2-hour difference on something that only goes up to 8, right? That's 75%, right? That's 25% difference. And here's what I'm getting at, guys. And I appreciate you guys kind of sharing it along with me. This is exactly why. This is 1000% why you have got to understand none of your motivations, desires, or dreams will come from anybody else but you. We're not all just different to the way we look, talk, act, speak, think. We have different routines, habits, different things that work well for us. Zach gets 6.5 hours of sleep. I can't do that. And I don't even like saying that. Here's what it is. My mind is very similar to what Melissa said. I'm an 8-hour person every single night. If I get 6, I used to be frustrated by that. I used to, if I would look at my clock and go, oh my gosh, I'm going to get 6 hours of sleep today. And I woke up that next morning, guess what I had all day long? An excuse. And it was because I heard that I need to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep. My parents raised me on 8 hours of sleep. I went through college getting 8 hours of sleep. Like, you guys, if any of you guys want to stay up and drink with me, you can't, because I don't stay up with you. I can't, is this not enjoyable at all to me? Now, here's what I've learned. I've learned that Brewster can show up on 6 hours of sleep, 7 hours of sleep, 8 hours of sleep, no problem. What it was all in my mind. It was 1000% in my mind. So I stopped. The days that I stopped looking at my clock before I go to bed. Like, okay, no, let me rephrase that. I always look at my clock before I go to bed. I quit calculating the hours that I was going to get to sleep. My alarm goes off at 5:50 every single morning, 5:50 no matter what. And I kept trying to go to bed right around that 9:45, 10 o'clock time frame. Last night I went to bed at 11:30. Night before that, I went to bed at 9:30. I've learned that for me, it was very psychological. For some of you guys, it very well is very true. So don't get me wrong when I say for me it's psychological. Don't take that and think that your 8 hours aren't important. If they're important to you, they're important to you. What it is what we believe becomes our reality. All right. So I love what you guys just said, and I appreciate you guys fielding it. And I really need you guys to understand that we've got to. Part of why we can't find our whys, part of why we can't find motivation in the day is because most of our stuff is derived from things that we've heard or from things that we've asked other people, like the health class thing, right? 6 to 8 hours of sleep. If you go into that further, do you know that now this is where I'm a big believer in psychology and anatomy. Do you know that you really only need 2.5 hours of REM sleep? There are people out there that sleep 4 hours a night. They've worked on a habit to get themselves to a point where in their first hour of sleep, they can get to REM right off the rip. And then they let their REM sleep last for 2.5 hours. They have their body, for some reason, and there's trainings out there, guys. There's things that you can do to get yourself down to 4 hours of sleep a night. I don't recommend it. What I'm getting at is there's no right or wrong, and there's no right or wrong motivation, desire, habit, or anything of that nature. But what we do as humans, because we're relational people, we constantly look to others to help us create and find our whys. And is the moment that I stopped doing that is the moment that, not the moment that I found my why, but the moment that I was on a much better path and a much more clear path around finding how and why I do what I do. I hope, and my goal is that you guys see a very consistent Bruce day in and day out. I didn't realize this. I had no clue that I didn't mention this, but I don't think half of you guys know that my wife's grandma just passed away 2 weeks ago. I've been living at my house with my kiddo and just me for 2 weeks. It's been a very griefful time for me in my personal life. And some of you know that, but most of you might not, because I don't share that with you guys. Not that I don't want to, just because I know how I am so in tune with my mind and my heart right now that I can flip things on and off pretty quickly, because all I got to do is look back to the habit beforehand. So when you guys are looking for yourself, when you guys are looking to figure out why you can't pick up the phone, it's not going to be in a textbook. It's probably not going to be online. It's probably not going to come from your friend or your parent or your relative. It's going to come from you sitting down with yourself and understanding that we're all different creatures, and understanding that this thing is so powerful that we need to provide some clarity on what we're thinking about. And here's how I went through some of these steps. So when I first started, I was looking to my coach to help me create my why. My coach was very good at drawing out people's whys. I actually interviewed with about 4 or 5 different coaches. I wanted to find the right one. If I'm going to spend $1,000 a month on a coach, I want to find the coach for me. And that was wrong. That was absolutely wrong. I probably passed up, and I probably upset a couple different coaches that probably would have been phenomenal for me. I ended up going with a coach who, that was kind of all of their reviews from other coaching clients said he was able to help them self-discover their why. The key that I kept missing was they self-discovered it. All he did was ask intelligent questions, right? And that's why my first coach, not Dawn. So my first productivity coach was Dawn, but my first kind of real life coach, business coach, production, that sort of thing, the first one I ever paid for. I don't talk about him much, but he was powerful, but he couldn't help me. And I was getting frustrated with him. And it wasn't him that I was frustrated with. He was asking me the same questions he asked other people. What it was is I wasn't taking the time with myself. I wasn't taking the time to sit down and go through some different things. And so he ended up getting kind of frustrated with me. And he said, Bruce, I've gotten to my point where I'm going to release you from our coaching contract if you want. I want you to find the help that you're looking for. And I know you're frustrated with me. And I can't say that I'm frustrated with you, but I don't feel like this is going to continue to work. And that right there kind of motivated me to understand that he was seeing the same things. And he said, here's the last thing that I want you to do. I want you to just pick something. Just pick something, Bruce. Pick something to focus on. What is it? Right now, what is the number one thing on your mind? And I said, well, I got a kiddo coming. I don't know how to raise a kid. He's like, is that on your mind? Because you don't know how to raise a kid? I'm like, no, it's actually the financial burden. I don't have health insurance. I got to pay for this kid out of pocket. The hospital told me it was going to be $32,000. They told me, my insurance company told me that, I wasn't going to be able to sign up under health insurance until the kid was born. So the way that the health insurance company works is if I wasn't already under the enrollment and I was outside of the enrollment period, the life event that happens is not the pregnancy. The life event that happens is actually the birth. And so my insurance won't kick in until the birth. And the way that hospitals will, the way that hospitals kind of itemize things is you have all this stuff up until, and all of that stuff gets put on this other kind of like billing sheet. From the day that my daughter's born, now I have bills for my daughter and then my wife. But my wife and I didn't have insurance, and so I knew that I was going to have to sell enough real estate to make $32,000. And by the way, we have student loans. I got into probably, I don't know, $17,000 worth of credit card debt to move out here because I didn't know what I was doing. And so money was just ramping on my mind, and it was just there. And so he said, Bruce, what the hell are you doing? How come you can't open up to me any other time? Why did it take us almost severing our relationship and me telling you just to pick something? Did all of that just come out of your mouth in like 2 minutes? And I sat back and I was like, I have no clue. I don't know why. But from that moment forward, I focused on money. Money became my everything. My all entire encompassing being was to make money. And it wasn't to make money to have money. It was to make money to pay off these bills. And I focused on it. I didn't focus on the bills. I didn't focus on what was coming at me. I focused on money, like literally a dollar symbol. For those of you that really know me, I don't think in words. I can't see words and I can't see numbers. When you guys tell me a word, I have to think of a picture. So I see money, I see green. Everything I highlight usually is green. Every time I hear money, I think of the money symbol. And that it was all over. I mean, my entire world, it started showing up. I started seeing green billboards and thinking money. I went everywhere. When the trees were budding, I saw money. It was wild how my mind changed in an instant, because I actually decided that I needed to give myself some grace. I knew money wasn't going to be my end all desire and motivation, but momentarily it was, because it was the most terrifying thing that I ever wanted to experience again. So I chose money. I started making money. I started selling houses. It was something that absolutely propelled me. And then once I got those bills paid, guess what happened with money? Didn't resonate with me. It didn't hit home anymore. There was no lust behind it. So I call up my coach. Hey, something's up. Something's up. Can't pick up the phone today. I don't want to go into the office. I'm going in, but I don't think I'm going to do anything. I hope they have coffee ready. And once that turned on me again, I had to go back and I had to think of some other things. Say, okay, we're on to something. What you just did, Bruce, in the last couple of months was you made $50,000 in 2 months. That's an unreal feat. So you have motivation. You have it inside of you. Everybody does. We just got to work to figure out the next piece. And then the next piece was I did the old cliche. I chose my family. And that worked for a little while. And I really thought with my heart of hearts that my family was my why. It's not my why at all. It's not my why at all. So long story short, fast forward, my big why, and I'm telling you, I had to go through 6 different whys. And here's what those whys were. They were just steps. So most of the time when we can't figure out our why is because we're trying to go from point A to B, and our why is actually at Z. But we get frustrated when we can't find our why. But our why cannot usually, I don't know many people that can just get to their why within 1 hour session. I hardly ever see anybody who can get to their why in their first year of real estate. I never have seen that. The people that actually get to their why, the people that really find it in them, are the people that understand they just need to take a step and believe in something as if it was their why. Because usually that step is like the first thing. So I started with money, and what's wild about my why and where I actually found out, it still deals with money. I was on the right path, but money wasn't the end all be all. So my Z, or my why, or my motivation, is it's a combination, and I don't know how to define it without telling you guys the two parts of my why. And I'm okay with two parts of my why because that's my why. It's not yours. It's not yours to judge. It's not yours to infiltrate. It works for me, and you guys can bash it anytime you want. It won't leave my brain. So part of my why comes from my childhood, my pre-programming. We talked about that a little bit. All of our habits usually come from our pre-programming in our childhood and our adolescent years when we were most vulnerable. And I told you guys, my parents are USPS delivery people, or letter carriers as they'd like to be called. Not mailmen, not mail women, letter carriers. They worked all the time. And once I started figuring out my why, it was like light bulbs was flashing. I remember sitting in my bed one night. My parents are downstairs. My parents never argued. But my parents, when they were fighting, they didn't show affection. And so I never knew that until I started really thinking back to my childhood. One time I'm upstairs in my room and I can hear my parents arguing, and this is something that they never did, ever. They would just not show affection. And I hear them arguing, but it's not loud. It's just a conversation. It's more of a debate. And it's my mom kind of sobbing, not really, but kind of, talking about how she wanted to surprise us and come to, we had a joint thing. So I had a soccer game that next day, and my sister had a volleyball game, and we both had home games, and the soccer field was right outside of the auditorium, so she could bounce back and forth. My parents never came to our sporting events. They thought that was something that they had to be at. They thought they had to be at that. My sister and I, we knew no different, guys. I really don't want to make this like super emotional. We knew no different. I could care less if my parents were at my soccer game. I didn't even look into the crowd when I played soccer. I didn't care. To me, there could have been 20,000 people around me or 50 people. And in our town, it was more like 23. I didn't care at all. My sister didn't care at all. But for some reason, my mom cared to no end. And I didn't understand that. Because if I didn't care, why should she care? She cared because she was my mom. She cared because she was frustrated. She cared because her life situation caused her not to be able to go to the prior habit to change it. She was stuck. They're 20 years into their career, and they still have to be on the overtime list just to be able to live on the farm that we used to live on, and we didn't even farm. We lived 35 minutes away from their post office. So they're in the car for at least an hour a day. They work 10, 12 hours a day. And that frustrated my mom to no end. But what frustrated her more was when my dad said, honey, you've got to work tomorrow. You cannot call off. You can't do that because we're only going to get paid for the 8 hours. We need more. And we need more for this. And here's what, so spiraling through, I remember these moments in my childhood. I remember, you guys know me when I talk about cold calling. I remember my dad always getting a phone call at dinner, and he'd always go over to the phone. I don't know why he still answered. He always go over to the phone, pick it up. If there's a telemarketer, this was back when there's no caller ID. Pick it up, telemarketer, slam the phone down. I mean, they don't talk. My parents do not talk ill of people, but they grumble. They huff like Melissa. And so that tainted me with cold calls. And so I'm not going to go on that train, but I'm saying I went through my childhood and I found these different things. And some of my why, half of my why, is because through that, I'm pre-programmed to have my parents' frustration. I'm pre-programmed to have nothing but a desire to be at home when my daughter wants to start getting into organized things. I have nothing but a passion to see my daughter for at least 3 hours a day, even with my crazy schedule. And it's 3 uninterrupted hours every single day. And that's my passion. That's my goal. That's my motivation. But my daughter's not my motivation. What it is that my motivation and my why is to not have that feeling, because that feeling is real for me. I still remember Hook, you guys. I remember that movie from when I was a kid. I remember that dad not being able to be there for his son. Do you know why that stuck with me See, I love how this class is going to circle right back around. Do you know why that stuck with me? Because my parents were sitting here doing the same. My parents were sitting there doing the same thing. They were so frustrated themselves. I saw the movie Hook. I saw how frustrated that kid was that he couldn't be with his dad, who was always on the phone. And I'm telling you, that's half of my why. My other half of my why is because I want to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want, wherever I want. And now that sounds like a bit of a cliche because, you know, I did steal that from people online, but it's probably one of the most simplistic forms of me saying, when my daughter comes home and says, Dad, I want to sign up for X, Y, and Z, I don't have to think twice about the cost of whatever that is. It's not that I want to do something when I want, with who I want. It's that people that are surrounding me. I hate to say this, and I'm glad some of my best friends aren't on there, but when I make it, when I truly become successful, and I have no doubt I will, my goal, and I'm going to shout to the rooftops, I will not stop, you guys, until I'm making $3 million a year. I'm going to live off of 1 million. I'm going to invest $1 million, and I'm going to give $1 million every single year when I hit that point. And there's a reason for that. It's not giving $1 million to one charity or 5 charities or 15 charities. What it is my friends, my closest confidants are going to be so well taken care of because I want to live a life with who I want, when I want, and that's with the people that I want to live with. And I know that they're going to have struggles and things. I'm going to pay for vacations that their families never dreamed about. I'm going to make sure that when my friend and I see them on Facebook and they have a thing that happens, a car accident, and they're out of work or their car's dead and they don't have money for it, I'm going to go buy it. And it's going to come up to their door with a bow on it. And it's not going to say anything about me doing that for them. That's my why. There's so many people out there that need help. There's so many people out there that need assistance. And for me, my major why is not the organizations and the nonprofits. What it is I have way too many people from the Midwest who struggle every day. I have so many people right now that are putting their grandparents to sleep, such as my wife. And you guys, you wouldn't believe what the passion I have in my heart today, because I couldn't pay for that funeral yet. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there. I couldn't pay for that funeral. I truly believe with my heart of hearts that if I had some more money and I was actually able to pay for 24-hour self-care for her grandma, she'd still be here. That's my why. That's how I get to where I want to be. And that's why you guys see me consistent every day. It's because there's nothing else that burns inside of me besides helping you build your business and helping the people in my friends and family life. But right now I can't do it. And here's the beautiful part about my why. I also know that I can calm down. I also know that I'm not where I want to be yet. And it's beyond me to dwell on the fact that I couldn't pay for my wife's grandmother's funeral. That doesn't frustrate me anymore. All it does is it instead of that frustration of, gosh darn it, I wish I was at that point. Like, why can't I be at that point? Why can't I just not be there to be able to pay for that? Instead, I've turned all frustrations into, it's just a building block of my why. It's just something that actually is going to continue to motivate me. See, frustrations don't motivate us. So it's beyond me to be frustrated about something I can't do at this point, but it is my goal, or it's not my goal, it's my job to recognize that can be something that continues to sustain my why. The beautiful thing about my why is out there every single day. Every single day I watch on Facebook. I get a call from my friend just a couple weeks ago. He's in construction. He's a master carpenter. I've told him multiple times, move out here. You will kill it. The Midwest does not appreciate his master craftsmanship, because in the Midwest, we don't pay for craftsmanship. You know what we pay for? We pay for a 30-pack of Busch Light and our friends to come over with a couple of screwdrivers, and we're using screwdrivers to hammer in nails. Like, that's what I grew up with. So, Bert's shaking. Bert, I'm just going to call you Bert, man. I don't think I can call you Zach. You're shaking your head, man. And my why is around me 24/7 because of Facebook and because of phone calls and because of different things. it's just there. And I'm sorry, I'm going off on this tangent. I'm actually becoming pretty darn emotional. My friend called me the other day. He has nothing but a passion and desire for carpentry. He continues to work on his skill, and he is so fed up with the job that he has, because all he does is build houses from the ground up. He wants to create. He wants to go into somebody's house and remodel it. He wants to go in and do finish work. But his main job is building houses from the ground up. He sits there and pours foundation walls. He does the framing. He does the drywall. He doesn't do the electrical, plumbing, and mudding and taping, but he does a job that has an attribute to what he wants to do, but the majority of his job is not what he wants to do. And so the other day he called me, and I'm telling you, I've never seen somebody so frustrated. Within 3 days after our conversation, he sent me a picture, and he started his own LLC. He's starting his own company. He told his boss he's done and that he has him for the next 2 months. But if his business has things that come up, he will not be coming into work that day. Because what we did was I helped him, and I barely helped him, guys. He found his motivation. He found his why. And it was just because he sat down with himself and found clarity. He took a day off of work. He took a day off from his wife and his kid, and he just sat in his truck, he said. He didn't know where he was going to go. He just started driving. He lives across the street from Walmart. He sat in the Walmart parking lot for hours, he said. And he said it was just nothing but back and forth in his head. And he finally figured out that there's nobody else that's going to disrupt his frustration until he did it. And I'm proud of him. He's doing nothing but taking action right now. And honestly, I have a couple jobs lined up for him at my rental properties. I'm shouting it to the rooftops with my friends and family back home. He's going to be successful. And the key is I know for a fact that nobody else is going to be a better carpenter or a better finished carpenter than he ever would be. But the reality is he found it, and you guys will find it too. But you guys got to take some time with yourself and only yourself. This is really rough for me to say. Don't listen to your spouses. Don't listen to your friends. Don't listen to me. That's a hard thing to swallow when I say spouses and friends, because we naturally gravitate and want to run out and ask for advice from our friends. We naturally do that. We're relational people. We're put on this earth to have spouses. We're put on this earth to have friends. We are put on this earth to have relations. That's why COVID is hitting us so hard right now, because with every fiber of our being, we're relational people. I don't care if you're introvert, extrovert. I've heard it all. I don't care if you're depressed, have anxiety. We all need relations. Relations are what helps us. And that's why COVID is hitting people so damn hard right now. It's so frustrating me. I mean, I'm very fired up right now. I got to calm down a little bit. So yeah, you take it away. You got to take it away. Okay, I got to breathe for a sec.
I'll do a couple of things. I'll give you, Bruce talks about how life deals your hand. My dad was in World War II. He got major hurt. He was able to come back and find a job where he took people swimming every day at a hospital. He was in a rehabilitation area. I was born deaf, didn't hear till I was 6 years old. Never once did my parents say, this kid has a disability, this and that. That just didn't happen in my life. So I'll never forget this. I was 14 and complaining about something, and my dad says, guess what? The hospital needs help on Saturdays feeding people, so you're going to start doing it. So I was a junior volunteer. So I would go in every Saturday and feed people who had gotten into automobile accidents, who couldn't walk, who couldn't lift a darn fork. And my dad told me, now, every time you complain to me, I want you to think about that guy who would love to be in your place right now and pick up that fork by himself and feed himself. And I thought, wow, it had a profound effect on me. And his thing was, you got to have good work ethics, bud. I don't care what else you do in your life, but you better have good work ethics. And if you do that, you'll be okay. And so it just became a mission for me. And so I never wanted to, I remember becoming a manager at 26 years old for the largest newspaper in California, and they told me I'd fail. So what did I do? Are you thinking I'm going to fail? Not a chance in hell. If I got to work 24 hours a day, I'm going to do it, right? Now, here's where I was going with the second part. The problem with that was at some point I started to hate the job. I liked what I did. I loved being in the newspaper business. I hated my job. Why? because I didn't learn a work-life balance. And when you don't have a work-life balance, you will at some point hate what's causing you not to have that balance. You missed this. I didn't get to do that. My husband wanted to go do this. I couldn't do it because I had to work. So pretty soon you have this resentment and you hate your job. So the life work balance, there has to be that where, you know, one of the things, sorry, my wife's getting on with my daughter. One of the things that my daughter has said to me, she's 42 years old, and just probably a month ago, we were at the table having dinner, the whole families, and I said, well, what's something that you remember? And my daughter said to me, you went to my track meet. And I thought to myself, oh my God, who would ever think going to a track meet would be so important that at 42 years old, she brings it up. And I remember I had moved to Macon, Georgia, and my boss asked me if I was going to a track meet, and I said, no, I've got work. He went postal on me. You're gonna miss your daughter's first track meet? Are you out of your mind? I'm sending you home. And so I got to go to it. So I learned, wow, there is this life work balance. And if you balance them correctly, you'll love what you do. You'll love real estate. You'll love the fact that you're out helping people and you're making money doing it, whatever your big why is. My big why I found out was I like to leave a legacy. I left a legacy in the newspaper field, and I want to leave a legacy with agents in the real estate field. So that was my big why. And it excites me when I see somebody do well. It excites me when they have their first deal. Just like my teams in the newspaper business, when we won awards, oh my God, it wasn't about me, it was about them. I was so excited. So I've learned what my big why is. But you got to learn that life work balance. If you think you're not just take a step back once in a while and go, okay, do I need to put an extra couple hours? Because maybe it's just that I'm not working smart. It's not that you have to work harder. Are you working smart enough so that you can get it done, so that you can have that life after work, like Bruce said, he likes to have that 3 hours. If Bruce wasn't working smart and doing the things he needed to do, at some point he would say to himself, I can't have that 3 hours with my daughter because I have to do this. And then he'd start to resent that job after a while because he didn't get the 3 hours. And then you would either go find something else, or you just become a disgruntled agent, not making a lot of money when you could make a lot of money. So you got to learn that balance. I can't tell you how critical it is. And you can do both. You'll be surprised. Just like Erica said, well, I like to get up at this time and do this. Well, if you create those habits as you go through, and you create real estate habits, things that you need to do as a good, successful agent, there's models that KW has and everything else, you will become that successful agent, and you will be able to have a life. You'll be able to go on the vacations. You'll be able to do all those things. So just know how important it is to have a life-work balance. It just, we call it life work, and it's really my personal life, my fun things, and my career. And can the two work together? It took me I'm telling you, I was 42 years old when I finally figured out that you could have a life-work balance. And it was probably the best day of my life, that I was able to say, wow, I can go do these things and have fun. And then I can also be really effective and successful at work.
Bingo.
So I'm trying to give you some life lessons so you don't have to be 42 years old when you figure it out. But you will figure it out. And so anyway, so yes, just to add on to what Bruce said, figure that out and figure out your why. My why at 42 was finally, I want to, when I retire, I don't want to, if I want to work, I want to work on my own. I don't want to be forced to work. And what do I need to do that? And I worked on it every year. I sat down and went over, am I hitting where I need to go? And if I'm not, what do I need to change to get there? And that was to be retired at 60. How do I do that? What do I need to do? And I would work every year. I'd sit down right around Christmas time and I'd figure it out. So, and that at that time was my big why. I didn't know that legacy was part of that, but I'm fortunate that I was able to do both and move forward. It's like Bruce said, you might have more than one why and you just don't even know it. So those are the things I would just add to what Bruce had talked about.
That brings up a couple other things. So you said 3 hours a day. So that 3 hours a day is not a consistent, it's not the same every day. Right. If my daughter is sleeping when I walk out of the door, I sometimes will go into a room, kiss her on the forehead, but most of the time I know it's probably going to wake her up and I don't want to do that to mom and just leave. But if she's not up, I don't spend any time with her. Some mornings I get an entire hour with her. Some mornings I get nothing. And so, you know, going home and really setting that up for myself, I had to have a very long discussion with my mom, her grandma. My mom and dad and my daughter are BFFs. They're there all the time. But my mom is the one who always, and my mom and dad, I always say my mom, but my mom and dad, they're together. When I say mom or dad, I mean both of them. They had such a routine that we ate dinner every single night, and it was never at a certain time. But here's what the key. They did have a bedtime every single night, unless it was some one-off special thing where I was out at a sporting event, you know, and had an hour-long bus ride home or something like that, right? So no, we didn't eat the same time every night, but I'll be darned if bedtime was at 8:30 and we ate at 8, it was in bed by 8:30. And so one of the things that I've said is that I don't find any science behind that besides that if it starts to disrupt a habit in her life or development. So when I get home at night, if it's a long night, my daughter knows that it's a special night and she gets to stay up late. Her normal bedtime is 8 o'clock. If we can help it, around 8 o'clock. If not, mark my words, she doesn't go to bed at 8 hardly ever consistently, because I want my time with her and my wife now wants my time with her. And my wife's on board with it. My grandma is still hesitant. She hates that there's no real bedtime at our house. But the key is that my daughter is excelling in everything that she does. She's advanced in everything intellectually and physically. She wakes up around the same times every day. So until that starts to change, I might try and set a bedtime. But for now, I'm going to take my 3 hours with my daughter because that's the most important thing. So the reason why, my mom can't tell me why a consistent bedtime is so key. But when I look at the room, we all talked about our morning routines, and I venture to say that if I went around the room, do all of you guys have an exact strict bedtime for yourself? But you guys have a pretty common or typical routine every morning. So that's my mentality. That's my mind. My mind is going, wait a second. I'm pre-programmed to think my daughter should have a certain bedtime. I don't have a certain bedtime. I go to bed differently all the time. All the time. And so I'm going to share that with my daughter too. And so I'm going to always continue to share that time with her. Let me share with you. So we're talking about this, and I want to go into somebody else's story. This is not their why. But it's kind of starting to become a passion of theirs. So part of life-work balance, we talked about, we got to know the opposite pole. We talked about when we get frustrated, it's probably a habit we need to change. And the reason why we talk about work-life balance and changing habits is because if you constantly run your life frustrated, you will become a victim. And a victim's mentality does not allow you to freely think. And if you can't freely think, you'll never really be able to sit down with yourself to find your big goal and desire. So there you go. That's why we sat there and talked about that for an hour and 26 minutes. Work-life balance will only come when you understand that it's a balance and equal opposite pole. To change frustrations is to change the habit before. To get rid of frustrations is to clear the mind. The only way you can find your desires and your goals and your dreams is to make sure you have time with yourself, and that's with a clear mind. So we talk about clear minds. So that's how we start to go through this. But you guys, I'm guilty of it. I drink beer. I love whiskey. Good Lord, do I like whiskey. We do things that we're wrong. I know that drinking heavily is wrong. So do I drink heavily? No, I don't like drinking heavily. I don't like being hungover. I can't stand being hungover. But I like whiskey. I like beer. I love Doritos. Oh my gosh. Doritos and Mountain Dew. I don't know the last time I had them. Probably 2 years ago. No, actually, I just had Doritos over Thanksgiving. Somebody brought a bag. I haven't had some of those guilty pleasures in a long time because I know how detrimental they are on my mental health and the way my mind works. So we talked about things and actions we can take to clear our mind. We also need to look at some of our habits in our physical exercise, our mental exercises, and what we consume in our body. We hear this all the time, guys. We hear this day in and day out, and none of us continually do it. If we're too busy and we need some fast food, we go grab fast food, right? We have those guilty pleasures. But I read a book, and Damon Eddy, our team leader, he also has read this book, and he and I love this. If you were to go eat fast food and 10 minutes later gain 50 pounds, how often would you eat fast food? Probably wouldn't be that often, right? But here's the key. It's because 50 pounds is something we can visibly see in our bodies. 50 pounds is something that we can feel because it's physical. But here's the key. That same hamburger, 10 minutes later, puts 50 pounds of strain on the way our brain fires and perceives and works. So in reality, those bad habits of drinking, food, not being physically active, you don't have to be physically fit. You just have to walk. You just have to make your body get in motion. Those things weigh on our mind, but because we can't feel them, well, we can sometimes feel them. Like I now recognize that when I eat unhealthy for a day, that next morning workout is a little struggle for me. It's a little tiresome, a little hard to motivate myself. And that's the key. I started realizing when I eat right and I'm physically active, I don't have to motivate myself to be physically active. I don't have to motivate myself to eat right. The only time that ever comes into play is when I stop eating right, when I stop exercising my body. Then I have to start motivating myself again. All right. So a lot of times what I'm really trying to do with this class today is I'm trying very hard for you guys to be able to not hit or scrape a bottom. I talked about my why, but I didn't talk about my bottoms. My kid was being born. I had a $32,000 bill sitting in front of me. I had credit card debt from business startup. That was my rock bottom. I'm not going to get all the way down that road, but I don't want you guys to have to hit a bottom before you find the way to pick up your phone, before you find the way to business plan your business, before you find a way to operate your business in a manner in which you absolutely tell yourself you're going to do, and then week in and week out, you don't do it. I need you guys to find that before you hit bottom. So my next story is with a gal. Her name is Kayla. And I had a conversation with her. She's willing for me to share this story with you guys. And it's not that big of a story. She had some very common things happen in her life, but the reality is our society has made these things become commonplace. But Kayla will tell you, she never thought that would be her. She never in her wildest dreams thought that she'd sit down at her doctor's office and her doctor tell her, look, after all of our sessions and therapy things, Kayla, you are deeply depressed and have a large array of anxiety on you. And I know that's going to hurt hearing that because that's not Kayla. Kayla is cheerful. She's bubbly. She is outgoing. She's awesome. Kayla is incredible. And for me to even listen to her tell me that that's what she went through, I actually called her to ask if I was going to be able to talk to her about her transformation today. I'm going to go one step deeper because she told me why she started this thing that she went on. So last year, Kayla could not figure out what was going on in her head. She couldn't get out of it. So she started seeing some people. She started exercising. She started eating right, and she still couldn't tackle it. So she went and she saw some people, and they diagnosed her with depression and anxiety. And she's a lot like me on that subject. She feels like that is something that you can control with different things and habits and different things. So she started trying, and it wasn't working as well as she wanted it to. And she ended up basically understanding that she was physically active, but she wasn't doing what she wanted. She was actually causing her own anxiety. She just felt like by eating right and exercising, it was going to help get rid of it. What it was her mind. She wanted to be more physically active. She wanted to become physically fit. She wanted to eat right. She wanted to get rid of alcohol. But the reality is she wasn't getting rid of alcohol. She was eating right on certain days, and she was active. So anyways, she started going through and she saw an ad online about being a bodybuilder, and her husband heard her laugh, and she despises bodybuilding. She despises those people. She thinks they're meatheads. She remembers, this is her pre-programming, she remembers back in high school, those kids is what she told me. So I'm gonna share my screen. Kayla has transformed since, this lady was not big. In my eyes, she was pretty fit the entire time I've known her. And she's transformed herself. And when I asked her, what in the world caused you to transform yourself? It was because her low of low was hitting something or feeling or basically being told something that she thought she was always putting at bay, and she apparently wasn't. So this is Kayla. Sorry for the skin. This is Kayla, May of 2020 this year. This is her last October. I think this was in Westminster or Vegas. Kayla has come a long way. This is not the person you see on the right, is not the Kayla that she ever wanted to become. She never wanted to be that person. But through that transformation, here's what Kayla basically found out. Through that transformation, here's what Kayla found. She found that she, in her life, what was really causing it was not her diet and exercise. It was the people she surrounded herself with. Her rock bottom was a place where she had surrounded herself with people in her world that did not help her in any way, shape, or form. They weren't her top 5 people. She surrounded herself with people that were victims. She surrounded herself with people that she constantly was trying to lift up. And it was daunting on her because it was basically bringing her down to their position. She started to develop the same things that those friends had. She never thought in her wildest dreams she was depressed. She still to this day is like, I still can't fathom that I'm depressed. But she said, now that I've been working on this, so I showed you May of 2020. That's when she started the physical thing. She started all of this last October. And so it's been 1 year now, basically. And she realized that her downswing was so much different than my downswing. Her rock bottom was that she had nobody left in her circle of life that was going after life, that found their motivations and their desires. She learned that through her daily life. She created this circle of influence that 100% was causing her to not have any motivation. She couldn't sleep, but yet she was so tired during the day. She would eat right, she would exercise, but she couldn't figure it out. She started eating so healthily, how do you say that? She started eating so healthy, but yet she still gained so much weight, she said. Anyways, her bottom to me was so astonishing. I was going to bring up her health transformation on this call, but what was wild to me was her rock bottom. This is how weird her rock bottom was. Her rock bottom was she had nobody else in her life that believed in themselves, which caused her to not believe in herself, even though she was doing the right habits. So I wanted to share that story with you guys because we keep sitting here talking about how we got to change some habits, we got to change some routines, we got to work on our frustrations, we got to work on that work-life balance. That'll cause clarity in our mind to focus on our things. But if we're not surrounding ourselves with the right people in life, none of that will actually matter. And Kayla's going to tell you, and Kayla will tell you, it's this combination of every single point. So those are your action items. Those are your 5 things, you guys. Work on those frustrating habits. Work on the people that you surround yourself with, your physical activity, your mental activity, and your diet. It's all of those. You can't skip out on one thinking one leg of it is going to pick up the slack. All right. Now, here's the last piece. The last reason why people have a hard time finding motivations, desires, and whys. Who here knows if real estate is right for them? Probably none of you, because you don't have the clarity yet on what it truly is we do. You don't have the clarity yet on what it is this profession is going to take you to, right? Like, I know now it's $3 million a year, right? I know now how. I know now exactly why. The how is important, but a lot of us try and figure out the how before the why. And then sometimes we try and figure out the how in its entirety when it's usually just a step progression. Because by taking each step, it's going to cause you to gain more clarity. So we're going to go through some things. Now we're going to shift gears and go into more business. We're going to look at some things that I hope provide clarity for you in real estate. Okay? So let me share my screen again. And, well, there's a tool that I definitely want to share with you guys. This, you guys have seen this a couple different times, or some of you guys have. Can you guys all see my screen, the one thing? Okay. I have to still do this. This thing still resonates with me. I love this to-do list. The reason why I'm bringing up this to-do list is because we talk about habits. I could only break a certain amount of habits if I worked on my to-do list like this. So again, you guys, I created this. The reason why some of you take this and understand it and think that might be profound the way I define it, but yet still don't find yourself using it, is because I created it. It wasn't you. And that's why motivation, desire, and all that stuff happens from within. Create things like this. As you guys go and you learn more about real estate, as you learn more about the systems, models, and tools that we're given, create things off of that for yourself. Don't continue to look at other agents in the office and look for an easy button, right? This looks like it was very easy to create. The reality is this is like, I don't know, like the 6th draft of something like this before it was something that I actually would latch onto. It went as simple as this most important thing used to be up here. All of these nurture things used to be up here. I just tweaked it until I found it to be the point where I wanted to. I haven't changed the quote in a long time, but I used to change the quote. And I wanna share with you this quote. Until my one thing is done, everything else is a distraction. Gary Keller. He has that on his desk to this day. I got this quote from the book called The One Thing. So if you haven't read The One Thing will help you with your desires and your why, and it will also help you with your work-life balance. And it's because what they've found out is that we cannot multitask, right? Just like you can't multitask and work. See, this is the key. When we put our work-life balance into play and we say our work goes up, but if our brain doesn't understand that this fell down, we no longer are focused on one thing. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to focus on work, but we're trying to also focus on sustaining our livelihood and things that we do in our personal life. And that's called multitasking. We multitask in ways that we never would have imagined. So the One Thing helped me, and it'll help you guys too. The book, it's unreal. I just found this out yesterday at the seminar that I was at. Companies are paying $50,000 for the people that developed the One Thing book to come in to their organization for a 8-hour seminar about the One Thing and how well it will affect them. They pay $50,000 to hear them talk about the book for 8 hours. I tell you guys, go pick it up on Amazon or whatever for like $12. You get the same thing out of it. You don't have to pay $50,000. But the reason why companies are bringing this in is because they know that they can't motivate their employees enough to go pick up the book and read it. The only way that they know that they can get the message across is to bring in that seminar. So when you guys are going through your day to day and you guys are really trying to work on motivation, you're trying to find your why, you're building your business, you're getting started, you're working on your habits, you're frustrated, you're going through all of this, think to yourself, what is the one thing that I can do today that makes everything in my mind and everything else less important or unimportant or will just fall into place? If you can focus on those major rocks, we call them rocks, we call them eat the frog. I call it the elephant, attack the elephant. Darby Stump calls it eat the frog. What it really means is you need to tackle the thing for the day that will put everything else into its own place. And sometimes other things that you thought were so important will become non-important and will actually figure themselves out. I've started to realize this. You wouldn't believe how many times I get on my phone and I see text messages and emails and phone calls. And if I let some people just let it sit there for a little bit, you wouldn't believe how many text messages I receive back after I call somebody that says, oh, I got it. I got to figure it out. Never mind. What it was is they were reaching out to me for that easy button. And there's no right or wrong. I really want you guys to reach out to me. I love when you guys lean on me. And sometimes you guys aren't reaching out for an easy button, but sometimes you are. And it's not up to me to tell you that's right or wrong. I'm telling you though, sometimes I'm starting to learn I can't give in to your easy button because it will help you advance yourself quicker. But what I'm getting at is most of those easy buttons, most of those reach outs, is just because somebody didn't think it through clearly enough. And if they just ask themselves this one thing, what is the one thing, the most important thing that I can do today? Or what is the most important thing I'm trying to accomplish that I can't figure out right now? And everything else falls into place. So my to-do list does that for me. This is in our shared Google Doc. Sherry, I know you're just coming in here. We share a Google Doc or a Google Drive for everybody in productivity. And so you have all these different resources. Oh, this is good. The one thing that I just put in here, the coming soon rules for Iris. This is in here now. So if you guys ever have a coming soon listing, I put this thing in here now, and it's pretty awesome how Iris works and what you do in the different phases. So we're not gonna look at that right now, but it's just the new thing I put in there. The next new thing that I put in there was the lid, or the law of the lid. A lot of times we can't get to where we want to be, not just because we don't have clarity on what we're looking to achieve. What it is we don't know how to break it down. We have no clue how to break down numbers in real estate because real estate is brand new to us. And so because we don't know how to break it down, I wanted to share with you guys the law of the lid. The law of the lid says you're going to accomplish whatever you see as a ceiling or a lid, right? You put a lid on a bucket, you put a rodent in a bucket and you put a lid on it. They're not going to be able to get out of the bucket. They're going to climb up it and they're going to hit the lid and they're going to fall back down, right? But if we take that lid off, they can get out. The law of the lid is no different in our minds. We hit our head on our lids all the time because what happens is our lid is only what we know. So I talked to some of you guys about the financial thermostat. That is a lid. Your financial thermostat, your level that you think in dollars and cents and money is your lid on finances. When I got into the industry, I was used to making $50,000 a year. My mind only thought in dollars, in tens and thousands of dollars. That's all it thought in. Now my mind thinks in hundreds of thousands and millions. I'd love to say I can get up to hundreds of millions, but my lid isn't there yet. My financial thermostat isn't there. My financial thermostat now is hundreds of thousands to millions. But we have lids. We naturally have lids. And some of the reasons why we have to why it's hard to create a life by design, why it's hard to balance, is because of an unknown, right? The unknown in real estate is what do I need to make? How do I need to do it? So I help you guys break down like your contact goals and your appointment goals for the year to hit that. But are we really looking at our lid for retirement? Are we really looking at our lid for where we're going to be at in 10 years? Do you want to sell? Do you want to be at people's houses and their dining room tables in 10 years? Do you want to be a real estate investor in 10 years? I don't know. The answer is going to be different for everybody. But the key is no matter what your answer is, you better start figuring out where your lid is at before you hit it. Because when you hit it, just like the rodent, you fall back down to the bottom. And so if you understand where your lid is at and you actually get there, you might not fall back down. You might actually just raise the lid because you understood how you got there. So the law of the lid, and lid's an acronym: lifestyle, investing, and debt. So this is an example. So if you have a $400,000 lifestyle that you want to sustain, then what is it that you need to make each year to sustain that in retirement? How much do you need to invest? And how much debt do you need to have in order to basically live that lifestyle? So at a $400,000 lifestyle, you should be, and this is based upon a 10-year rule. In 10 years, you won't, if you got an average of a 10% return on your investment, you will need about $4 million in real estate investments. So at 20% down, you need to make $80,000 for each million. Wait, that's wrong. I'm sorry. I don't know why that math is wrong. I'm trying to think of why. I stole this from a very reputable source. So now I'm trying to figure out why that's 80,000.
I think it means if you bought a 4 million piece of property, you have to have $80,000 to get that 40 million so that you can have that ROI of 10%. I'm trying to remember this. I remember this as well, but.
Oh, I know what it was. I was tweaking the numbers. To get $4 million to get $4 million worth of real estate, it's 800,000. That would be your down payment. So as you go, no thank you. Yeah, but I'm recording the class. I can't think. So it depends on how you would get there, but the basis is to have 20% down for 4 million, you need $800,000 down. So how can you make an extra $800,000 in the next 10 years to then have that 10% ROI or that 10% return to then sustain or start to sustain a $400,000 livelihood? Because 10% earnings on $4 million would be your $400,000 lifestyle. So if you want to get there in 10 years, you need to basically live your current lifestyle as well as make $800,000. So I encourage you guys to think through in 5 years, in 10 years, you don't have to use the law of the lid in this math for 10 years. You just have to know the calculations. So this plan right here is if you want to get to a lifestyle where you're earning on average $400,000 and you want to do it through real estate investing, you need to basically make sure you invest about $800,000 over the next 10 years is the way this breaks down. Now, there's other things that come into play, right? Your debt. So 50% of your lifestyle and investing, you need to also make in the interim during this 10-year period. Go ahead, Melissa. I know exactly why it was 80,000. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to follow. I don't get the debt part. Why is it 240?
It's 240 because it's 240 because it's half of your lifestyle, and there's another 40 grand in there for the tax bracket, basically.
Okay.
It is hard to follow, but you guys, I will go through these exercises with you based upon what you want. But here's the end all be all. If you guys actually start to provide clarity on what kind of returns you want in your retirement, I can help you break this down. Because your returns on retirement need to be based upon what you want your lifestyle to look like. But you also have to understand that as you're going through those 10 years, you still have that debt reduction that you need to continue to pay off. And so I now know why I put 80 in there when I was talking to and taking this from our class yesterday. $80,000 is what you need to make every single year to get to $800,000 for the down payment on those investments.
That's right.
But taking the 80, I know why I deleted that zero. $80,000 is it every year. So you need to make $80,000 a year to just invest in those $4 million over 10 years.
That's
If
right.
you're-
So you might be buying one a year. It's not a $4 million property. It could be X. I remember.
It could be anything. It could be 40, it could be 40 properties. It could be one property worth 4 million. It's not about that. It's about just clarity on what do you want to live off of 10 years from now. If you want to retire in 20 years, what do you want to live off of? And then use 20 years in the example. So in this example, this person is currently living a lifestyle where they have a $400,000 lifestyle. So they also need to then make another $80,000 on top of that to invest in. And then to pay down their debt, they're going to need to make another $240K. So this is an extreme example, right? Like my lifestyle is not there. My lifestyle right now is at 65,000.
And I will also tell you one of the first ways that you can then use money to invest when you might say to yourself, hey, I've got just too much debt, whatever. I remember sitting down with my financial guy and he said, Harry, I want you to try to pay off your house as fast as you can. Because as soon as you do that, we're going to use that money to do other investments. And I thought, this guy's nuts. And in reality, he was absolutely accurate because you end up not using that money, right? So you pay off your debt faster or your home, and all that money then becomes what you use to invest. And so it's not like you had to double up your money. You were able to just start funding it differently as you move forward. And it was smart. It ended up being a smart move.
Mm-hmm. And that's why that debt category is there, because a lot of times we think about our lifestyle. Well, my lifestyle includes my debt payoff.
That's right.
But I need to excel that debt payoff because I won't be where I want to be in 10 years if I don't. Melissa, you still look confused.
I feel like my number isn't, I don't know, I'll have to just look through it. It doesn't seem like it came out right. But maybe.
Well, and I don't think it should come out instantaneously. Here's the biggest piece that we all most likely are missing in this class today. What do you want this to be? What do you want this to be in 10 years?
Yeah.
Because these numbers change drastically. If I put in my 65,000 up here, these all change drastically because now 65,000 is not $4 million worth of real estate. This is saying if I want to sustain my $65,000 livelihood, then I don't need $4 million worth of real estate. Now this 4 million would stay, Melissa, if in 10 years I wanted to have a $400,000 livelihood, then this actually stays the exact same. You know what I mean?
You have to sort of determine. So as you go ahead, Bruce. Sorry.
I'm just going to tell Melissa, this is why I'm so fired up today. I will help you walk through these numbers with yourselves on our calls, Melissa.
Okay. Yeah, I walked through them, and that's how I backed into like what my goal is for next year. I just did it in a different way, so I just need to look at this a little bit more because this might make more sense.
Yeah, and so everything is about building for your later in life things, and there's two things that sometimes, especially at your age, you'll have to remember this: is A, did you set yourself up so that if one of your parents or your husband's parents becomes unable to make their payments in life, that you take that over? And that happened with me with my mom. For the last 5 years of her life, I paid for all of her housing, her food, everything. But I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. But I also looked ahead and said, what do I want to live on to be comfortable in my life when I don't want to work anymore? What number is that? And then so you back in. So all those things that Bruce is talking about, if 4 million gets him where that lifestyle that he wants, and he's determined what that lifestyle is going to be throughout his whole life. And really, when you get retirement, it's not quite as much. But you say to yourself, okay, I got to earn that. So how do I earn that? What do I need to do now as I move forward in my life that's going to get me to that point down the road? Because you're doing all this not for today's money. If you think about it, you'll make it through today. You'll make it with, it's what do I want to look like 25 years from now?
Exactly. Yeah, everybody focuses on today's money. I used to focus on 65,000.
Yep.
Right? I used to always be like, all right, if I just make $65,000 this year, I'll be all right.
Oh,
The reality is I'll just live this year. I actually will never hit my motivations, dreams, and desires, but I'll also never hit my motivations, dreams, and desires until I know what kind of financial things I need to hit to get there. And so every day we have to basically look at our expenses, as well as debt reduction, as well as what we want to contribute to investment. That is actually our major focus of our entire year. That's what your real estate income level, when you would do a 135 with me, that's what I want to see. But this is a deep class today. So when I first start with somebody, I don't go through all of this. I go through, hey, what do you want to make next year? Why do you want to make it? Let's add some taxes. Let's add some business expenses on there. And let's see if you're willing to take and go through these activities. See, when you guys look at the activities that my 135 has on a daily basis, it would make you sick. And it used to make me sick to my stomach. But because I know exactly where I want to go in life and I know exactly what I want to do, it no longer looked like Mount Everest to me. When I first sat down with my coach, man, my day-to-day looked like Mount Everest.
Oh, listen, when my financial guy, when I was 42 years old, told me where I needed to go, I thought he's out of his mind. This is not possible. But believe it or not, he made it so much simpler by doing X things as I moved forward. But all of a sudden I was like, oh, man, this is going to be easy. I can maybe retire at 58, even though I didn't. But the other thing, what I try to do with agents right now, Melissa, and the others is, you should be thinking about what do I want to make as a agent for the year? Because the rest of the money I'm going to put aside and do things with. I'm going to do a Roth. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. It's what can I live on today that's going to keep me okay, good lifestyle, and then whatever else is left is going to help me with my life down the road. And so we have to figure that one out. Is it $5,000 a month? So that's $60,000, and we work numbers backwards from there. And then how much do we want to save, et cetera. So Bruce is right. It's not about, it's part about today, but it's more about setting up today for tomorrow. If that makes sense.
Bingo. So let's talk about this, because those are large numbers. And when you guys calculate yours out, if you use the LID method, and remember, Melissa, it's just a method. You and I have talked about several different methods to come up with it. The reality is whatever numbers you want to dive into is what numbers will start to become true. Here's the key thing I want to kind of, we're getting to the end here. I don't have too many other things to share with you guys. This is what we really go through in real estate. This is what we go through in life in general. This is what a lot of things that we start with new on kind of has the same cycle. So number one, trial and error. A lot of real estate agents that just first begin their career, they're in this phase way longer than they would ever anticipate. And that's my job. My job is to like Sherry's on our call today. She's just getting started. My job as a coach is to make sure that we understand this time period is one of the longest time periods and very frustrating and very, very daunting and very much like nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's going on. This is your trial and error period, right? This is the trial and error period. This is the period of time where you have to give yourself the grace to go, I need to focus on this thing for the next 90 days, and I'm not going to give up until I focus on it. And then I'm going to figure out if this is working or if this is something I want to continue to do, right? When you start your real estate career, you guys are all told, here's the ways you guys can gain leads, right? And then me as a coach, it's really hard to tell you how to gain leads because every personality is different. You can go on open houses, you can door knock, you can cold call, you can go to networking events, you can ask everybody at the grocery store. You can do all of these things to lead generate. The key is if you don't give it enough trial and error period, if you don't give the period of trial and error in those manners enough time, here's what happens. Phase 2 starts to happen. You start to innovate it. You start to go, I don't need to learn scripts. I'm just going to read it and I'm going to tweak it and I'm going to do it myself. And then what happens is you derail the plan. You didn't stick to the system. So phase 2 is very important. Phase 2 is the innovative piece. Phase 2 is making sure that you did something for so long through the trial and error period that when you get to phase 2, it's actually time for you to start to innovate it. If you do phase 2 too quickly, you're going to see these other dotted arrows. They go off. And I watch a lot of people in real estate do this. We need to stay here longer than we think. And you almost have to have the want and desire to stay here for a period of time. What I see people do is they trial and error a couple things. They think they got it down. And what was mind-boggling to me is before they even start to see results, they start to innovate it. They start to change it. I got somebody right now who basically told me that they're having trouble with their buyer's consultation. And I thought they've been using my buyer's consultation this whole time. They're not. They're innovating it. They watched it one time, and then they tweaked it, and they went to their appointment, and they missed half of the punchlines, and somebody else got the job. I don't know if they would have got the job, but they tried to innovate it way too early. They needed to get it down. I don't care if my buyer's consult doesn't sound like them. If that's what they chose to use, then use it. If you don't use my buyer's consultation and you use somebody else's, then use it for a period of time before you even start to think about making it your own. If you innovate something correctly, meaning at the right time, after you have it down pat, then you will start to follow this other order and things won't go to the wayside. You won't believe how many times I see people, cold calling is not for me. How long did you try it? Bruce, I tried it for 3 months. Okay, how many contacts did you make? XYZ. Well, according to my math, that doesn't add up to your goal of 15 per day. So tell me why that didn't work. It just didn't work, Bruce. I don't want to do that. Okay, let's pivot. But here's what they try and do. They try and pivot here, meaning they try and innovate something when they really needed to go right back to here. Okay, so this period of time takes a long time, you guys, a long time. This is why when I speak, I say it takes 2 years to build your business. Brashears, I hate to pick on you, but you're trying to build your business in 3 months, right? And you're smiling because you're starting to get it. And that's why I feel comfortable picking on you. And it's not a pick. Melissa is very hard on herself. She wants to get her business off the ground and running now. And it's going to take a couple years. But you're going to see results. You're still going to make money. Look, the line still moves. It just doesn't go up. There's no such thing as a diagonal line. It's a bell curve. It's exponential. And so once you start to innovate and find your own, this is what I'm going to call about year 1, 1.5. Year 2, your phone just starts to ring as long as you continue to put in the same effort and energy. In here, see how this isn't going up? Who cares if you're, I almost said that the wrong way. I almost said, who cares if you're getting real estate sales? I know that that is something that you care about. Don't get me wrong. But the reason why I'm good with progression is because I know you're here. And I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at everybody, Melissa, on this phase. Everybody gets frustrated when they can't get a couple of deals in. I always told you, Melissa, my fear is the people that come into real estate and get their first couple of deals right off the rip. They didn't spend enough time here and they're creating bad habits in their business. And then they wonder why they sell their first couple of homes to their friends, their family, and their neighbors. And then their business just plummets their second year. It's because they didn't even have time. They were trying to figure out real estate because they had actual deals. The beautiful part about this is not having sales through this time, and you continue to put forth that effort and motivation, you'll start to get here. And then you'll start to get here. And then this is where it won't stop. This is why I can tell you guys, I've been a full-time coach this entire year, and I just closed my 30th deal without picking up the phone. I'm in here. But I'll tell you, my first 2 years were not here. I earned every penny I got my first 2 years. It was a grind. And that's only because I set my sights up on something, outrageous.
Yeah, and there's 2 parts to that real quick, Bruce.
Yeah.
Sure, you might, I was just talking to somebody this morning. She says, I bet I have 1,000 hours in it and I haven't got a sale yet. And I said, okay, well, let's just back up for a second. In that 1,000 hours, did you learn anything about real estate? Well, yes. Did you learn how to do a contract? Yes. Did you learn how to do a script? Yes. Did you learn how to do that? So in reality, even though it was 1,000 hours, it was a useful 1,000 hours in that you learned real estate better. And when you do start to get those deals, they're going to be so much easier and it's going to just flow and you're going to be better at it and you're going to be able to treat your clients better because you have all this knowledge that you had to learn in this business, this new business. Anyway.
Yep. This next one, I don't love the way it looks like a clock because I don't want you guys to think it's a time thing, right? Harry said it earlier, work smarter, not harder. But here's more of an energy dial. So this is, you guys have heard of the law of the rubber band. A rubber band is useless unless it's stretched. You do not grow muscle until you fatigue them at the gym. And even after they're fatigued, you don't grow them until you stretch them, until you hurt them, until you tear them. If you guys want to grow, understand that there's an energy dial working against you or with you. A lot of times people will put in effort and it's just called your natural ability. You're not willing to stretch yourself. Is Patrick McClintock still on here?
I sure am.
Patrick, you get to be picked on here. Well, you
Sounds
and
good.
Caleb. I'm hearing you and Caleb. Caleb doesn't call me enough for me to know he's stretching himself. I have to hear it from Michelle and Darby. But you guys are both stretching yourselves, and Patrick has been stretching himself. And he's going through this energy dial system, right? What it is Patrick started off cold calling and dialing for dollars, and he did it with basically his natural ability, meaning he did it in the time that he wanted to. He did it with the amount of contacts he was okay with that day, and he was, catching himself doing some dishes and cleaning up the house and, just excuses. Had other things to do. After Patrick decided he got into this pro time, this time frame of stretching myself, exhausting my energy, exhausting the things, he started to stretch. And the key is, you guys, we don't live here. Patrick isn't living here right now. He had to take a couple of dial sessions to stretch himself to the point now where he feels comfortable, where he's doubling, tripling his contact goal, not his contact goal. He's doubling, tripling his contact output from when he first started. When Patrick first started, it was a stretch to get X amount of contacts in. Now, Patrick is blowing that X when he first started out of the water. And he's shaking his head because it's no longer a stretch to him. So as we go through our energy dial, understand that growth comes from the fatigue moments. Growth comes from the moments that we're at our low of low, right? With Kayla, she had to be diagnosed depressed, right? With me, I had to get into financial burdens. With Patrick, he had to understand that he wasn't going to make any sales calling 3 people a day, right? He had to stretch himself. I had to stretch myself. Kayla had to stretch herself. Patrick, that's what you're doing, is you're getting into this red phase here. You're growing, and that's the only place that growth happens, is when we stretch, when we bleed, when we hurt, when it's painful. Now it's not as painful, right? To lift up a 50-pound dumbbell for me right now would be painful. But if I consistently practice and I persistently lifted weights, in a month from now, 50 pounds will not be a stretch. It won't be hurt. It won't be painful, right? But I had to go through pain to get there, if that makes sense. So I don't love the dial. I love the concept is really what that's about. Another thing to look at and understand. We think, and again, this kind of goes back to that bell curve, right? We think that what we do is in a linear order. We feel like it's on like this angle of things, right? I can't see myself anymore to see what you guys can see. We think that growth goes like this. Growth does not happen like this. Growth happens kind of in 2 separate ways. So I bring up 2 different diagrams because I love that our minds think a little differently. My mind thinks in the bell curve. So that last diagram that we have, I love the bell curve idea. I know that the effort I put in today, no matter what results I see, it's just a trial and error period. I'm going to get to it. I'm going to have it. It's going to happen. What's up?
Hey, this isn't typically me, but
That's you.
because I'm used to having a full bag and I go over there and that's it. I never leave. But because I came over here and then scooped everything off the table, totally forgot.
No, that's okay. So I look at a bell curve, that thing resonates with me. When I'm frustrated and I'm fatigued and I'm burnt out for the day, I just sit there and tell myself, you're still in the trial and error period. Hang in there. It'll come. If your plan is sound, you will get to step 3 before you know it. You'll be on a rocket ship up to the sky. Just keep going, right? Some people look at it like this. So if you more are on the line of this is the way growth happens, take that out of your mind and you might more gravitate towards something that looks like this. Growth is actually a stepping stone. You see, when we're growing or going up, we're gonna hit some things on the way, right? So Melissa, you want, I don't even know why I'm calling Melissa out. You're just right below my picture. Melissa, Patrick, Zach, Harry, I don't care. You guys all want sales right now, right? So you want sales, and that would be considered growth in your eyes. But here's what happens as soon as you get 3 sales. Like Zach, you went through a couple. Melissa and Patrick, you're working on your first. When you guys get your first, it's going to feel like you're growing. Guess what you're going to hit? You're going to hit this ceiling. You're going to hit another lid. All of these things are lids. It says refine systems. See, you guys, I cannot stand when somebody comes into this business and wants to basically refine their system up here. They want to build this system before they get started. And the reality is they have to go through all this stuff before they even use that system. And chances are, if you've never been in this industry, the system that you build before you get to it is not what you're going to use. That's why you start here, you start to grow and then develop your systems based upon what's coming at you and based upon how your production's going. Then you develop a system to manage 3 contracts at a time. And then all of a sudden you start to grow, meaning you're going to manage 4 or 5 contracts at a time. Well, your system was built off of managing 3. So now you got to redefine that system to manage 5 and so on and so forth. This is growth, guys.
Yeah,
Quit looking at it like this.
Yeah,
Go
and
ahead.
there's 2 things to that. One is if you have what you just said straight up, you'd always be playing catch up and you'd never really understand the business or figure out at some point when it blew up, how come it blew up, because you never had a chance to analyze everything you were doing. If you look at the stepping stone part, you grow, you level out a little bit. That gives you a chance to understand what you've been doing and then design, what do I need to do next to get to that next level? And so then you grow again, and then you do the exact same things. The other thing is if you just had one line all the way across a plateau, at some point your business would actually be getting worse. In other words, if I did the exact same business for the next 3 years, let's say I got 12 sides this year, 12 sides next year, 12 sides next year, in reality, I lost money because the market, expenses and everything else in the world moved up, but because I did the exact same amount, I didn't get anything out of it, right? So you're gonna have plateaus. You've got to be able to figure out your growth patterns and what you learn from that growth so that you can go to the next growth level. And that gives you the time to analyze it, to fine tune it, to know that it works, and then create new systems to move to the next level.
Bingo. I appreciate you guys. That's all I have. Does anybody have any tidbits, thoughts? Because that was long and I was long-winded there.
No, thank you. I think a lot of this really rings true for especially where I'm at. Just, hearing all these different stories and then also just having conversations outside of this, like, especially with my wife, it's like, okay, I have this first deal lined up, but then it's like, what's after that? So you got to keep on grinding at the things and making calls and doing things to make sure that it's not just that one deal. It's always like, what can you work on for the future? So that's like stuff that really rings true for me.
And I really hope, and I appreciate that, Brady. And I really hope that there's 2 things that you got out of it. One, I wanted to share my story. I don't think I've really ever gone that far and that deep with it all. But two, I wanted to give you guys some actual tangible things to start working on. And so if you didn't get the action items out of this, call me after and we go back over them. Well, I'll just tell them to do it again, right? Change the habit before change the habit before the habit that was frustrating to you, right? Clear your mind. You cannot be in victimhood. Victimhood does not allow you to think into the future. Victims only think about the past and the present. But in order to grow and actually develop, you have to be able to think into the future. That's where your motivation and desires are. So you guys got to go through those steps that I was saying earlier, right? Change those things. It's not all about just diet and exercise. It's about all of them. Kayla is a perfect example of that. And I never expected that story to come out of her mouth, to be honest with you. So I appreciate you guys. If you guys didn't get tangible action items, give me a call because we missed something. But my basis was to not have this big why class about what a why is. It was about you guys now, step one, taking actions around figuring it out. And only you will be able to figure that out. I'll help you.
It's a business, guys. Businesses take hard work. And hopefully Bruce and I can make it easier for you so that you can work smarter and get there faster. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and business takes time and effort to get where you want to go and to be successful at it. I don't care what business it's been. That's just how it works. And so, you know, what a great thing is to have coaches like Bruce that can help you get there, and that can give you some of the right tools that you're going to need to do it faster than it would normally have taken you if you were by yourself, just sitting in there trying to get it done. Just remember that. This isn't one of those, I get in it today and I make a fortune tomorrow. You will make a fortune. It's just, there's some stepping stones to get to that point. That's all I look at.